Welcome to Hello Me, It's Me, Vulnerable AF, a podcast hosted by Nikki D. Lovely. That's really just her diary disguised as a podcast, but who cares? You're here for it. Join in as she addresses her self-reflections on life, love, and dating, and gives us all the tea by being more vulnerable than she ever has, with herself and the world. So let's get started in today's episode with Nikki D. Lovely, already in progress.
Ooh, hello, and welcome to another episode of Hello Me. It's me, Vulnerable as F. Yo, I don't know if y'all know if anybody's following me on Threads right now, but for some reason I have been probably the most vulnerable than I have ever been on my Threads. I feel like my podcast shouldn't even be called Hello Me, It's Me, Vulnerable as F. I think that's what my Threads should be called because I have been just laying it out over there. And I probably need to rein it in. I probably need to pull it back a little bit. Sometimes I feel like I share more than I probably should, kind of oversharing. And I think that's something to talk about in terms of vulnerability versus oversharing, because some people misconstrue the two. However, I feel like for me, I am more vulnerable or more open about my experiences as of late in hopes that maybe some of the things that I've gone through can help someone else. Given that it took me a very long time to even get to the point where I was able to talk about these things. If you guys have been with me on this podcast since 2023 or have even gone back and listened to some of my earlier podcasts, it's very hard for me to open up and to talk about a lot of the things that I discuss now. Even the things that I write about now, I sometimes look at like, oh, I can't believe you're sharing this. But I'm not doing it from the standpoint of like, oh my God, I cannot believe you're sharing this. This is going to kill us. I do it more so like, wow, you've come a long way. So I think that brings us into our topic of conversation, honestly, which is getting to a space where I became more emotionally intelligent, more in tune with my emotions by being a little bit more vulnerable. By opening up to everyone via podcast, I will say, there's not a ton of people that listen to this podcast. However, there are quite a few of you. So I appreciate those people who do listen and who do come back every week and support your girl. Because honestly, when I first started doing this, I was really just doing this for myself. It was a social experiment for me to be more vulnerable, to be more emotionally intelligent. A lot of women and men get to a point where we're good at everything. We're good at our jobs. We're good at making money. We're good at sports. We're good at whatever we put our minds to. And that one missing piece somehow seems to be relationships. And I feel a lot of it is because we are not in tune with ourselves. There are a lot of people who have wonderful, great IQ measured based on how smart you are. But there's a ton of us who are missing the EQ, which is the emotional intelligence. And it's one of the reasons why people are not connecting. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people are saying that the dating pool is trash or that there is pee in the pool. And it's mainly not, it is because there's pee in the pool. But the pee that's in the pool is basically the lack of emotional intelligence. It is the lack of empathy. It is the lack of communication. It is the lack of self-awareness. It is the lack of a lot of things that people just don't seem to grasp because they have not taken the time, like they've taken the time to be good at their careers or to be good at sports or to be good at whatever hobby it is that they have done. They have not taken the time to do the inner work that it takes in order to have the relationship that they would need or want, I know there are a lot of people who want relationships right now, but either they're blaming it on the dating pool, which that's not to say that there's a problem. There's a problem. Like I said, the problem is the fact that people are missing their EQ. The question is, though, is that person you? Have you done your work? I'm not going to say that all work has to be done through therapy. I understand that there is work that can be done where you don't have to go to therapy to do it. For 10 years, I read lots of self-help books. I got myself together that way. And for people who cannot afford therapy, I think that is a very good way to do things. It's the way that I did it, but it wasn't because I couldn't afford it, because once I realized that my insurance covered it, I really had no excuse. And that's one thing I do want to point out. A lot of people don't know that your insurance covers therapy. So make sure you check and see. I've gotten on several of my girlfriends who didn't know that their insurance covered it. And once I told them that, they had no excuse. So check to see if your insurance covers it. Everyone should be covered, given Obamacare. I don't know what that's going to look like in the next couple of years or even the next couple of months. But if you do have it now, I would suggest that you go ahead and try to get it if you have not already. If you still just want to use it as an excuse as not to get therapy, then there are a lot of great self-help books that you can utilize. And I'll go over some of those books that I've read myself at the end of this podcast because there are several that I suggest personally. But from that, let's talk about EQ for a minute because I know I went on a little tangent there. EQ, which is emotional intelligence. Let's go ahead and actually just read you the definition of that. The ability to recognize, understand, and manage your own and other people's emotions. So that's known as emotional quotient. Emotional intelligence is known as EI. But here are some components of EI, which is some of the things that I stated earlier is self-awareness, which is understanding your own thoughts, your own feelings, understanding why you do things, self-regulation, which is controlling or redirecting your emotions. And that's meaning like if you get angry, what do? Are you okay with talking about things? Do you hold things in? Are you petty? Those types of things. How do you self-regulate? Do you go off on people? I know for the longest time, I used to watch my father. He would go off on people when he got mad. And I thought that was the way that you handle things, that you just kind of go off on folks. But I learned as I got older, okay, wait a second. No, that is not how you handle things. You do not act like a toddler. You do not storm off. You do not yell at people. You do not try to make them cry. And some things, some self-regulation techniques that we do that are not good. So do you know the difference between the good ones and the bad ones, right? Empathy. Do you consider other people's feelings? And this is a big one. I feel like a lot of people in this day and age are they're just so selfish, honestly. They're really just about themselves. I think empathy is a big part. As an actress, I kind of have to have empathy. You draw from your empathy. You draw from how would this person feel? And unfortunately, I did that a little bit too much to the fact where now I have to be very careful with who I let in my circle because I am so empathetic. But that's a good one in terms of EI. But you can have empathy for other people, but still not, be self-aware. So just know that just because you have some of these things doesn't still make you have the emotional intelligence that you need. And then the last two would be relationship management, which is developing productive relationships, really knowing how to manage conflict. That is key. How do you manage conflict and how do you handle group situations? So developing productive relationship is, how everyone says, I don't really want to see you when you're good. I want to see what happens when things are bad. There's a reason for that because everybody wants to stick around when things are good. But when things are bad, how do you handle that? Like if I threw something at you and it was a mistake, but you thought that I intentionally did that, and now you come at me and want to fight me, what are some things that we could have done before we got to that place of, you wanting to fight me? Could we have stopped for a second and could you have come to me and asked me, hey, I appreciate you throwing that ball at me, even though I know maybe in the moment that wasn't your first thought, but maybe in that moment, just stopping in for a second and saying, wait, was this intentional? Did this person mean to throw this at me? And even if they did or did not, did I have to escalate it to a fight? So being able to manage conflict is very important. And then also motivation, being aware of what motivates you. Are you doing nice things because you're trying to get something out of somebody? Are you doing nice things for someone because you actually want to do nice things for that person because that is part of your character? Okay. All right. So now that we've gone through what emotional intelligence is and what it entails, some of the things that we need to look out for, and also some of the things that you could ask yourself, let's dive into, let's see here. Let's dive into the difference between emotional intelligence and emotional manipulation. I'll start off with this personal journey with the story, basically about someone that I went out on a date with recently. On my threads, I had him as Mr. Fine Ass because that's what he was when I first saw him. I thought he was really handsome. He was very charismatic. We sat down to eat. He was very, you look beautiful. Oh, you're gorgeous. Oh, let's see where this goes. I hope this is the end. It was a lot of love bombing. And it was, I'm different. One of the things I remember is him saying, I'm different from the rest of the people, which I hate hearing people say I'm different because that typically means you're the same and you're playing a game. And that's basically what happened. So we had a good night. The night ended very nicely, but I want to go over one part of emotional manipulation, because there was a point where I had told him that there were so many drinks that I drink when I go out. And usually my number is 3. I won't go over 3 drinks total. Shots, I'll take 2 of, and then I'll do 1 mixed drink. Honestly, you don't need to know all that. I know that, but I did tell him in this case because he kept saying, why don't you just have 1 more shot with me? And I was like, no, 2's my limit. So I know 2 shots are my limit. I don't go over it. At this big age, I know what my limit is. I'm not going over it. And there's a part where he was like, well, I'm not gonna force you. I'm not gonna force you. But the way he said it was it was kind of one of those things where it was like, I'm not gonna force you, but I would prefer if you would do this for me. And he brought it up again. So it brought me to the point of realizing, too, that some people who play with you, who don't have emotional intelligence, will try to play the games with you. And you have to be careful of people who push past your boundaries, who are trying to see how much they can manipulate you. And I know that was an instance where he was trying to see how much he could get past me. If he could see how much he could push me to do something, based on how cute or funny or attracted to him I found him, But I did think it was important to point that out, that you will have people who will try to manipulate your intelligence. And then that's where boundaries are very important and where you need to have them. You need to come in knowing what your non-negotiables are. And my non-negotiables at that point was, I'm not drinking past 3 drinks or not past 2 shots, which is what we did. Let's see here. All right, this is a good one. How have your experiences helped you spot emotionally unavailable partners? I will say that the fact that I was emotionally unavailable for so many years, it has helped me to determine who's emotionally unavailable too. Once you have healed and once you're in a space where you're okay with all your BS, like all the stuff that you were afraid to discuss, the things that you were kind of ashamed to discuss with emotion, once you're okay with that stuff, it's like, I'm okay with, whatever. So if this person walks away, then fine. It's very easy to find other people who are not okay with their stuff. It's all based off of the questions that you ask. What I have learned is people who are willing to hold an emotional space for you typically have done their work, but also where you can come back and hold an emotional space for them, that's when you too have done your work. And what do I mean by holding an emotional space? Because you're like, wait, what do you mean holding an emotional space, Nikki? Holding an emotional space means I am a safe space. I am a place where someone can come to me and be vulnerable. They can tell me about their childhood traumas. They can tell me about a fact where, maybe their dad or their mom wasn't there, maybe left them at home. There were days they didn't eat, and how that made them feel. There are a lot of people who will talk to you just about surface level stuff. And I'm not saying like having these conversations like the first or 1 or 2 or 3 times that you talk to a person. I'm saying the more you get to know someone past the 3 or 4 month mark, you're past all those pleasantries. And now it's time to really get kind of deep with them. Are they willing to get that deep with you? And based on what they show you, have seen that most people are not. A lot of things that people will do, and this happens mainly with a lot of avoidance, is they pretend. They will put on what we call a mask. I wore a mask for many years. A lot of people would look at me, and I had high functioning depression, which is where I was very highly depressed, but kind of like Robin Williams. I'd walk into a room and you would never know. I was the life of the party. I was the jokester. I was the person that always had a smile on her face. You would never have known because I was wearing a mask. And that's what a lot of people do. They wear masks. They aren't able to talk deeply about their past. They're not even able to talk deeply about the things that scare them because a lot of times they haven't even dug deep enough to talk to themselves about those things, much less talk to you about them, right? When we're talking about emotional intelligence, we want someone, again, who is self-aware. You have a lot of players who are not self-aware that they're players. They know that they're the pretty boy or the F boy, but they don't know why. They don't know why they are afraid to get close to someone, why they're afraid to just be known as the cute one, or all they think they have to offer someone is their looks because they've been abandoned before. So they have a thing where they just play people and abandon others because they've been abandoned so much themselves. In my last date with that one guy that I was just telling you about, on our date, he mentioned to me that his mom left the entire family when he was 12 and he never saw her again. And I'm not going to lie, for me, that was another red flag. And I only say that because a lot of the times, the people that have ghosted me have always been people who have been abandoned before. They have severe abandonment wounds because they have not done the work in order to heal those abandonment wounds. The first ghoster from Louisiana, both of his parents had passed away. And because both of his parents had passed away, my alarm bells went off. And mainly because my first ghosting experience, I forgot about this guy because I remember thinking at the time I had high emotional intelligence or empathy for other people. But I remember this man told me that he moved to America when he was only 16 years old because his parents had kicked him out on the street. And he was basically an orphan in his eyes. He had no clue where his parents were. I think at this point, this man was like 35 years old. He had not talked to his parents since he was 16. And the last relationship he was in, his wife left him. So this man I knew had some extreme abandonment issues. So it was no surprise when he love bombed me. This was my first experience of being love bombed. He love bombed me, told me the first night we went out together that he knew this was it. You know, I kind of needed to make a choice right then and there because he'd already made his choice. But for me, I'm thinking this is only the first night. And I'd already been in a relationship with a guy who had told me very, very front on, very head on, that he only dated one person at a time and I needed to get off the market if I wanted to talk to him and blah, 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 blah. So I'd already had my experience with those type of men. I was like, nope, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to take my time. And he didn't like that. And so I won't say I never heard from him again because I did. He was one of those ghosters that ghosted and then came back with a hi, how are you? Like they didn't just leave. But he was my first experience with a ghoster. He was my first experience with someone who had abandonment issues. And usually, I'm not trying to, there's a word where you draw a conclusion just based off of one, or your several small experiences. Just because those are your experiences doesn't mean make it true. However, what I will say is I have done extensive research on this and the fact that I have gone through it myself and seen this with other men that I have dated as well. Abandonment issues are a big thing when it comes to why people ghost you. They're afraid of being abandoned, so they ghost you first. And I can just speak for myself. I used to do the exact same thing. As a former avoidant, I used to abandon people. I used to self-sabotage. I used to be like, there's no way this man really thinking about me. There's no way this man actually likes me. Once this man really finds out who I am, he's not going to stick around anyway. I would do things in the beginning just because I knew in 3 months, this guy wasn't even going to be around. That's why I hate the way my brain thought. It was, just go ahead and do whatever you want to do anyway, because this man isn't even going to stick around. So it doesn't matter. You can say whatever. He's not going to care. He's not even going to be here. And if they were still around after those 3 months, I would find a way to leave. Because I'm like, well, if I don't leave, he's eventually going to leave me. Situationships were easy. I only had one long-term situationship, but that was easy because in my brain, he wasn't my boyfriend. So I didn't have to try that hard. And in my brain, I knew he wasn't ever going to be my boyfriend. So I really didn't have to try that hard. If he left or didn't leave, it didn't really matter because we really weren't boyfriend and girlfriend anyway. So there was some safety in that. There's always a little bit of safety in not fully committing to something. When you are an avoidant and when you lack emotional intelligence, when you have not done the work for yourself, that's when those type of situations are easy, which is why I say don't start dating when you're in that space. When you're still healing, you should not be dating. There are a lot of times I'm sharing my dating stories and I have people say, that's why I'm off the dating apps. And I'm like, well, why? Go get in there, girl. And they're like, no, I'm working on myself. And I'm like, yep, cool. Exactly what you need to be doing. I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody that they need to be dating when they need to be healing. Because when you're not healing, that's when you're part of the problem, right? So let me just talk about the difference in dating after healing versus dating from a wounded place, because there is a huge difference. As I told you just now, when I was dating from a wounded space, I did not let people in. It was very scary to allow people to come into my space. I would self-sabotage. I would run away. And again, if the person didn't run away first, I would make it so that they would run away or I would run away, right? Dating in this new healed version of me is so much better because I don't care if the person runs away. So I don't care if people run away. Also, I don't care if something doesn't work out. As a matter of fact, I'm at this place right now where I've been on maybe 6 dates so far. Now, I was really into the guy I was talking to in September, but of course he was an avoidant, so that didn't work out. The guys that I've met since then, it's hard trying to compare it to somebody who love bombed you. However, there are some people who I feel like if we kept in contact, it may turn into something else, but they haven't been proactive enough to continue it. So I feel like it's just kind of going to fall into the abyss. Before, my unhealed self probably would have taken it personally. Now, I would never have told anybody that. I probably would have pushed it down. I would have pretended like I didn't care when in actuality I really did. But being healed, I know that this is just part of the process. I know that I am not going to be for everybody. And the sooner that I know that I'm not for this person, and the sooner that they know that they're not for me, the better. Because we can just stop wasting each other's time, And one thing about me right now at this big old age, I'm not about trying to waste anybody's time. It sucks when you have really good dates, and then at the end of them, you're just kind of like, okay, that was a good date, and this is a good person, but this just probably isn't my person. And that's kind of where I've been the last 6 dates. I am going on 2 more dates this week. Tomorrow, I have one with someone who I put on my threads as a introvert. He's an introvert. And I'm an introverted extrovert. So I have my introverted moments too. I'm very interested to see how this is going to pan out. I've only dated one introvert before, which is actually kind of nice because I was very attracted to him. There's something that's kind of cute and sexy about someone who's so reserved. But this will also be interesting because he is also of another ethnicity than I am, and he is from another country. I'm dating a lot of men who are from other countries lately, which is perfectly fine because I love learning about different countries. And not that I'm dating people to learn about their countries, but I'm very open. I'm a very open person. I'm a very empathetic, open person. And I don't discriminate at the end of the day. I think people are people. And so that's what I do. I just date people. But I'm interested to see how this pans out because he really is first generation. I don't even know if he's American. I guess we'll figure that out tomorrow. We've been trying to save a lot of stuff for tomorrow. I asked him if he was nervous, and he said that he was nervous about tomorrow. I'm a little nervous too because I'm traveling over an hour out again, and I don't know why I keep doing this. I'm doing it because I know why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I like to push myself. I like to push myself into things that I probably should not be pushing myself into, but what can I say? That is one of the reasons why I moved back to Los Angeles was to be closer to more cities and more things. And I don't want to get so closed off and reserved and introverted that I don't venture out and do more things. So I told him I would come to him, and that's what I'm doing. I'm super nervous about it, but there's that. I also have another date coming up with someone else who I call Mr. Healed and Healthy because he himself has gone to therapy and he's done his work. However, I feel like we're very similar in a lot of ways I've learned in terms of talking about things. One thing I love about being healed and in this dating space is being able to talk about things, not being afraid to open up, not being afraid to say if you like something or if you don't like something or, I'm a very considerate person anyway, but I found myself a lot more patient in this new space. Either it's going to work out or it doesn't. And this Mr. Healed and Healthy, I still have yet to meet, but we were supposed to meet tonight. But he's going through physical therapy and he fell asleep. And we're getting older, so I'm at that place now where I'm trying to be understanding. And we rescheduled for Friday, which I think is better because he kind of spurred today on me at the last minute, and I was like, I don't want to do this given I have other things to do tomorrow. So tomorrow I am going to the beach and hopefully I'll have some good things to report back. If not, I'm sure you'll hear about that too. But so far, out of the 6 dates, things have really actually been really good. If you want a complete breakdown of them, make sure you go to my threads and read about those dates on threads. Otherwise, I'll be giving you some recaps here. All right. Let's see here. What changed after your 5-year celibacy period? So I was celibate for 5 years. And then, you guys know I started dating again. That's why I started this podcast. And we'll see how long it goes. I don't know. I haven't found anybody in California yet. And one thing about me now is now that I'm healed, the last thing I want to do is just kind of give my body to people. It's just like, my body is so precious. My temple, it really is like a temple. Like, I'm just not throwing my body to people. And there's way too many STDs, and I don't want to think about that stuff. So, all right. So before we get out of here, let's talk about how you can improve your own emotional intelligence for healthier dating. There's a couple things you can do. One of the things we already talked about for sure is going into therapy. I strongly recommend therapy because even though I did a lot of my self-help, and I even wrote my book before I went into therapy, there was a lot of stuff that I feel like was like the culmination of all of that self-help stuff I learned in therapy. I put a lot on therapy, even though I did a lot of work myself. For me, as a perfectionist at the time, I needed to know what I needed to work on, except for the fact that I knew I was dealing with a situationship for 5 years. And at that point, I could have been married. It was like 5 years is down the drain. So I feel like if I had gotten into therapy sooner, that never would have happened. The fact that I was so emotionally unintelligent for so long is one of the main reasons why I push therapy as hard as I do, because I don't want people to wait as long as I did to get the help that they need. I should have been in therapy. I should have been in therapy as soon as that man went crazy on me. In 2004, my ass should have sat down in therapy then. But did I do it? No, I didn't. Do I wish I had? Yes, I do. So outside of therapy, another way you can practice your emotional intelligence is by practicing self-reflection before you react. So a lot of people just react, or they let their emotions get the best of them. But if you can just take a beat, if you can take a pause. I remember I told somebody, just take a beat. And they were like, take a beat? What's that mean? In the acting world, when we say take a beat, it means take a beat. We call it a beat. Take a pause. Take a pause. Stop reacting so soon. I remember one time when I didn't hear back from the guy I was talking to a couple of years ago. And he responded that he was sorry and he didn't want me to feel like that. He was an introvert and I didn't understand. But at the time, I really felt bad about being around him and I didn't accept his apology. So instead of just saying, but it really hurt me, I need to think about it, I just wrote back, take all the time you need, because I was upset. What I said was not what I really wanted to say. If I really wanted to be genuine the way that he had been genuine with me, I should have been able to say to him exactly what I just said just now. But I wasn't able to do that then. I'm able to do it now, but I wish I could have been able to do it then. But if I had just taken a beat, if I had taken a pause, if I had just self-reflected, if I had given myself a day to self-reflect instead of react immediately, then maybe I would have been able to meet him where he was, with what he was giving me, which was a lot better communication. He was still an avoidant, but he was still able to communicate that to me. All right. So number 2 is setting and respecting emotional boundaries. You should definitely set and respect other people's emotional boundaries. So one is if I have a boundary, which is when we get into an argument, I don't want you to yell at me. I don't want you to scream at me. I don't want you to call me names. That's an emotional boundary I expect for you to respect. And some things should go without saying, but sometimes you do have to tell these people this because that's where people go as soon as they get into an argument, whether it's something that they've seen themselves or not. Also, this is big to me, being open to feedback without defensiveness. My goodness. Wow. My goodness. Wow. Oh my goodness. If you can be open to taking what I call constructive criticism or quote unquote feedback from others, then your relationship with others will be so much better if you don't get defensive about it. I have to calm myself about this because I was critically criticized a lot as a child from my parents. So even though they had the best intentions, the way they would say it to me made me immediately go into defense mode. If I heard quote unquote criticism from anybody. I had tried so hard to be like the people pleaser, to not hear criticism, that when I heard it, it hurt my heart. Like, it was like, dude, you know how hard I work for you not to criticize me? That came from my parents. That came from being criticized from my parents so much that I didn't want to get criticized from anyone else. So when I would hear a critique, I would feel like this tension. Man, and you may know what I mean. When someone gives you a critique and you're in defense mode, you feel like your heart kind of start beating fast. Like, you might get a little chest burn. Like, you feel it. Like, I used to be like, oof. Like, it would be right in my brain. It'd be like, oh, I might turn my head like, oh, I know she isn't. Whenever I got to a point where I started to be able to recognize that feeling, I was able to pinpoint that whenever I was getting critiqued, all of a sudden I would feel my blood elevate. Then I would have to say, well, wait a second, your blood's elevating. Why are we getting defensive? So in those moments, now when I hear someone about to say something, even when I'm reading online, you know, when you read something online and it's about you and you're taking it personally and then you start feeling your blood boil, I had to stop. You stop and you ask yourself, hold on a second, why am I getting so worked up over this? Take a beat, again, take a pause and listen to the critique. I mean, maybe there's some merit to it. And if there is some merit to it, take what you need out of it and just get rid of the rest. You know, like, that's one of the good things about being healed, is being able to take criticism and realize that it can only make you better. If you take the parts that you really are supposed to, the parts that you're supposed to hold on to, it can and will actually make you a better person. So definitely make sure that you're able to listen to other people without getting defensive, and being open to it. And then last but not least, learning to communicate your needs without the fear of rejection. Now, this is a big one, because a lot of people put up with a lot of stuff because they're afraid of being rejected. And what I mean by that is, like, you're quiet when you know you need to be speaking up. You allow people to do you dirty when you know you should be speaking up. That man called you and told you he was taking you out on Friday night, and he didn't. And this is the third time. And you're still here because you're afraid of quote unquote rejection. Baby, he already rejected you. Okay? It's over. But because you're so afraid of losing this one person who's already disrespecting you, you're allowing the disrespect. Because now you're afraid to communicate because you're afraid of losing this person. You're afraid to put up boundaries because you're afraid of losing this person. But the only person you wind up losing in this case is you. Only person you wind up losing is yourself. Let me say that again because it's important. When you allow other people to walk all over you and just do whatever they want to do, you're showing them that they can do whatever to you and you're willing to stay because you're afraid of rejection. And they know that. That's what you're telling them. And that's not what you want to tell them. You do want them to know that you're sticking up for yourself. Because the only person going to stick up for you is you. People only do what you allow them to do. And it took me a very long time to realize that and kindly understand what that meant. Because I was raised with parents where I had to do for them whatever they wanted me to do because I was living under their household. But then you become an adult, and those things that work when you're with your parents don't work in the outside world. So now you're having to relearn those things. So that's why I say your emotional EI or your emotional EQ, a lot of people's emotional intelligence is still based on how they interacted with their parents. And what they needed to do to survive with their parents is not what they need to do to survive in real life. Is not what they need to do to survive in a partner that they really want, who they don't want to be like their parents. So that's why I say it's very important to make sure that you are self-aware of some of the things that are holding you back from a good relationship with someone. Being self-aware of the things that are holding you back from a relationship with yourself. Because that's, I know it sounds cliche, but it's first and foremost. I don't expect anything from a man that I'm not willing to do for myself. I don't expect dinners. I don't expect hotels. I don't expect trips. If I can afford to do it myself, if I can afford to walk out on this date with this person and pay for this date myself or pay for this trip myself, I'm not expecting it from a man. And that came from dating me, from dating myself, from giving myself flowers, from taking myself out, from taking myself on trips. I did a lot of that for a long time. Would I like to go on a trip with someone? Sure. But am I willing to sacrifice me to do that? No. However, I have been working, I have been healing, and I have been doing what I need to do in order to get the emotional intelligence that I need to fulfill whatever I need in a partnership. And that's what I'm hoping will eventually pan out. I'm not going to say like it's going to happen by the end of this year, even though I hope it will. I said that last year, but I do. I hope it will, because I've still been learning lessons, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning every day, which is why I'm here talking to you. And with that all being said, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Well, for joining me. Thank you for joining me. I would like to encourage you to self-reflect on your own emotional intelligence. I would like for you to identify the signs of emotional growth in yourself. If there are some signs of emotional growth that you have learned, I just want to say I'm proud of you, because there are a lot of people who aren't doing the work, and you are invested enough in yourself to do what you need to do in order to be a better version of you for the future you tomorrow. So that all being said, oh yeah, I said I was going to give you some books at the end of this. Let me see. One of my favorites is The Mountain Is You. It is by The Mountain Is You by Brianna Weiss, I think. The other one is The Mindset, and you can look it up. It's by Carolyn somebody. There's one. It's a white cover. There's two different ones, but it's called The Mindset. Big one. And then one of my other ones is A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, I think. Those are my three top favorite books. Attached, of course, is another one you should definitely read in order to figure out your attachment style. But I only suggest reading that if you have kind of gone through therapy, you've done the self-help stuff first, and then Attached, I recommend once you start dating, just to kind of realize what your attachment style is, because sometimes our attachment styles are different with different people. So that's why I say actually read Attached while you're dating. So anyway, I have talked you guys butt off enough. I would like to thank you again officially. And until next time, I will see you next week. All right. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Hello Me, It's Me with Nikki D. Lovely. Just remember, you can't change who you were yesterday, but you can always learn and grow to become a better version of yourself today. So make sure you do the mental work today for the future you tomorrow, and I will see you next week. And in the meantime, make sure that you check me out on my Instagram at Nikki D. Lovely or _broke_mama. You can also find me at nikkidlovely.com and check out my book, No F Boys Allowed. I also have a poetry book coming out pretty soon, so just a little shameless plug. But either way, I will see you guys next time, and thanks again.